Well, it's the top of the hour. Hello and welcome. My name is Rachel Orlansky, and I am the Vice President of Student Affairs here at UAGC. I will be the host of this session, The Triangle of Fear. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, we've enabled live transcription. If you'd like to use it, click the live transcription button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now, I'm pleased to introduce you to Nancy DeVore, your moderator for this session on student fears. She is a business consultant and associate faculty member at UAGC in the College of Arts and Sciences in the Department of Behavioral Sciences. She teaches industrial organizational psychology with an interest in bridging the gap between online learning and real life. She holds a Ph.D. from Capella University in general psychology and specialized in the experience of inspired change and how chance encounters can move people toward their higher purpose and unlock possibilities. Nancy, tell us about who is on this panel and what they will be discussing today.
Thank you, Rachel, for that wonderful introduction. My name is Nancy DeVore, and I will be serving as your moderator for this panel, as Rachel described. This is an outstanding panel of contributors, and let me share why this panel formed and why we're a micro team with a message. It came about on some comments that I received from my students on the fear of success. I noticed that it seemed like students were worried in different ways, and these fears seemed to be sort of hidden. For example, students were high performers in some of my classes, and they were worried about what's next and how their role is going to affect what's next. As a researcher at heart, I wanted to find out more about these fears of adult learners in case there was something I could do to help in the course that I teach. With some input from coordinators and leaders of this conference, I spoke with them and they suggested that I talk with some of the associates who work directly with designing and implementing student success programs. As I started talking with different associates here, I found out that we had so much in common about our passion for student success and our willingness to listen and develop solutions that make an impact. These colleagues that I met through this process were willing to share their experiences, their knowledge, and their ideas here today. Let me introduce these distinguished panelists to you. Dr. Teresa Leary Handy is an assistant professor program chair in the School of General Studies at UAGC. She's certified in practice in directing and managing diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. She's a published researcher and is a member of the editorial board of the Journal of Research on Leadership Education. Mostly, I know Dr. Handy as an expert on the complexities of imposter syndrome, and Dr. Handy is involved with the design and implementation of courses at the beginning of a student's journey here at UAGC. And she makes sure that students are strong self-advocates. And she said yes to being on this panel because she loves sharing and learning new strategies for student success. Matt Phillips is also on board as a panelist today, and he's a Student Affairs Program Manager at the University of Arizona Global Campus, and he has a background in mass communication with an MA in creative writing and applies that writing to pedagogy. He's the first generation college graduate in his family and also maintains a career as a fiction writer. Matt understands the bridge and the leap to post-graduation for students. He's a problem solver, and he said yes to being on this panel because it multiplies passion for student success. Our next panelist is Stephani Kilby. She's experienced in the roles of registrar, quality assurance, student services, and currently student success. She relates to the student experience, and she's also herself been an adult learner. And she's also a lifelong learner. She currently serves as the Director of Student Services at UAGC, and for Stephani, it's all about the student experience. She wants to ensure that students not only succeed, but that they thrive in their academic pursuits. She's an advocate for student success, focusing on creating an inclusive and empowering environment. She's here to make a difference in the lives of students, and she said yes to being on this panel because she wanted to fill her cup. Our next panelist is James Bond, and he served our country with a U.S. Army career on the global stage. James went from leading soldiers as a non-commissioned officer to earning a BA in psychology and an MA in education, and supporting military students affiliated with community colleges and nonprofit and for-profit institutions. On Veterans Day in 2014 in Washington, D.C., along with two colleagues, James presented a congressional briefing on how the UC system supports military-affiliated students. Currently, James serves as a student advocate, adjunct faculty member, and UAGC. James understands what it means to fit in and not to fit in for students, and especially for military students. James' areas of interest are building core skills, and he's spent the last 15 years in higher education supporting the military students and non-traditional students. And he said yes to being on this panel because it enriches connection with colleagues. Our next panelist is Deb Swanson. Her experience spans both education and business management. She's experienced with the management and strategies of franchises, international corporations, for-profit businesses, and not-for-profit organizations. And she holds dual master's degrees in business administration and organizational management. Deb's a people-centered and an active volunteer in her community. She's been an educator for more than 17 years and currently serves as a faculty support consultant. She's all about making a positive impact on the learning experience of students. And she said yes to being on this panel because it gives her a chance to recognize the values of connection, belonging, and the practice of the culture of care that we practice here at UAGC and how it makes a difference for students. Our last panelist is Bill Davis. He's a program chair, assistant professor in the Ford School of Business and Technology at UAGC. And he has extensive experience in education in all aspects of business, including consulting, management, leadership, sales, marketing, strategic planning, human resources, and organizational change. He has over 3 decades of experience working in the beverage industry with PepsiCo, a Fortune 500 company, serving in front, middle management, executive leader level positions. What I've noticed about Bill is that he's a servant leader, and he's a big advocate for demonstrating why students matter. He's blended his successful career with PepsiCo with his over 18 years of academic experience as a program chair, lead faculty, assistant professor, core faculty, instructor, and more. He loves furthering student learning and sees student success and wants to see student success. And he said yes to being on this panel because of his passion for student success. We're a micro team with a message. The theme of this conference is working towards yes, open access as innovation in higher education culture. And this conference poses the question, does the culture of higher education need a new paradigm? This presentation offers some insights and ideas about the human-centric side of higher education by being aware of different types of fears that adult students may have that are fueled by learned bias and intrusive thoughts of what they might lose if they complete their study program and gain success in their careers. The way this panel presentation came together is based on some comments that I received from students on the fear of success. I noticed that it seemed like students were worried in different ways, and these seemed to be hidden. For example, students who were high performers appeared to be worried about what's next and what their role is in what's next. I wanted to find out more about these fears of adult learners in case there was something I could do to help in the course that I teach. What I found in my preliminary search is that there are 3 basic types of fears described in science and also in media: fear of success, fear of failure, and imposter syndrome. And each have unique characteristics. Fear of success, this is about having anxiety about the change that success can bring to one's life. If someone's been told that they're not capable of learning at a college level, or that it breaks the family culture rules about self-expansion, one might attempt to sabotage an effort towards learning just so they won't have to rock the boat or bring rejection from their family or their social system. Fear of failure is another one. It's a little different than that in adult learners because they can scare themselves into performing because the company's paying for the tuition, or if they don't complete the course, then maybe they will be responsible for their tuition. And fear of failure can also be hard for adults who have not had much experience with being their own self-agent with their decisions and actions, where they think autonomously and independently, especially if they see others acting uniquely and independently. The last one is imposter syndrome. And it's received a lot of attention lately because it describes some of the unique experiences of second guessing one's skills and talents, doubting one is able to finish the course or the degree program or step into the next career opportunity. This is the type of fear that can morph into impression management. Oh, I just have to look good to get by. Or to be speaking in ways that it's helpful for us to be speaking in ways that help to overcome those kinds of thoughts, because they're going to be thinking about ways to overcompensate. But at this point, let's do a quick poll with Bonita Bryant. She's our help host behind the scenes with technology, about which fear type which of the fear types you see of the 3 that we've talked about that you see the most.
Hold on, because I had started. Hold on 1 second. Sorry about that. I'm so sorry. It's not restarting.
We can see it, Benita.
You can?
Yeah. I mean, I can see it. I think.
I just was wondering because
I can as well.
Okay, sorry about
Yeah, I
that.
can see it too.
Okay, good.
You're at about
Really
54%.
interesting results, Nancy. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I know fear of failure was the #1 fear that I felt, because I just wanted to make sure I got through. And there's always something in the back of my mind going, no one's ever gone this high in college. Do you really think you're up for it? It's like, where did that come from?
You ready for me to end it?
Yes, please. Well, thanks everybody for sharing that. I appreciate hearing from you. Our panel today is presented in 3 parts. One is the chronological life of students. So we're going to start talking about how a student starts out with their educational journey. The second is taking a deeper read of what's going on from our panelists, and then also taking a moment for a future vision, for ideas of what we can do better and maybe easier, and remove some of those barriers. So for part 1, the chronological side of the student journey, it has to do with enrolling and orientation and the first few courses that a student has. And I have a question for Stephani Kilby. What are some of the specific occasions that you've noticed that's where you've noticed student fears, and what's crossed your mind?
Thank you, Nancy. That's such a great question to start our discussion. And I'm happy to share from my perspective, both as an adult learner and as someone who has worked in higher education for over 10 years in many roles, currently within the specific realm of ensuring student success. But I'd also like to ask, as I reflect on this, that everyone here today reflects on the question, because in thinking of the roles we all play and our responsibility to meet students where they are, it all starts with the recognition that fear can manifest itself at any time and in many different forms. And so I noticed with the poll, not one person answered none of the above when asked about which fears are most prevalent based on your own observations. So I know that there are personal examples that are going to come to mind for you. But you asked about specific occasions, and there's a few that I'll suggest. First off, early in a student's tenure, when the excitement of being a student starts to wear off and there's a realization that sets in, there's a fear, perhaps of the academic rigor or the challenge of reintegrating into the learning environment. Fear can pop up when it becomes clear that the path is not always short or not always smooth. There can be a fear of commitment. They're recognizing that being a student requires dedication of time and resources. There's a fear of challenges along the way. So that very first challenge that pops up, what might require a sacrifice? There could be a fear of making a wrong decision, of missing out on other aspects of your life. The fear that comes with the first tough class, of not being good enough, of imposter syndrome. There's also a fear when perhaps they're not performing well academically, or maybe even when they are. What fear comes with those potential consequences of either not meeting expectations or of meeting expectations and then being asked to maintain them or exceed them? You asked what crosses my mind when I think of these times, and what crosses my mind is that there's an entire support network available to students, an incredible collection of resources, years of knowledge, of experience, a passion to connect with students and help them. But it often boils down to a fear of asking for help, a fear of being judged. So at the root of it all, it's that fear that we need to overcome, because a student who feels comfortable enough to raise their hand and say, I need a bit of support, that's the student who has all the power in the world when it comes to achieving their educational goals.
Wow, that's awesome, Stephani. Thank you for that. Yeah, it just made me think of culture of care with your last comment there about what you've noticed. My next question is for Teresa Handy along those same lines. What are student fears, or what are student fears have you noticed in the first few courses that students attend, and what crosses your mind?
Thank you, Nancy. Wow, following Stephani, we both have some of the same comments to make, I think. This is such an important topic, and I'm just really proud to be here today with everyone. So I teach the very first course that our students take when they come to UAGC, and they are typically all over the place. They're managing financial aid, they're adding college to their already busy lives, and for many of them, it's their very first time doing online learning. So they're also learning how to navigate technology. But what I really feel from students is the sense of, I don't really belong here. That's often riddled with memories that they've had of previous schooling experiences. So one of my messages, and I have a lot that I share, and I have some standards that I keep, I always say high standards, high rigor, lots of support, right? So the important piece is that I want them to know that they are never the worst thing they've ever said or done. in their whole life. And so that is such a pure place to start for students. And with that being said, I let them know that they belong here. Because our students a lot of times don't feel worthy of joining a higher education culture because of their age, maybe their experiences with the legal system or rehab, or maybe they're just in transition. So when they get here and they hear us say that we believe in you, they don't always believe us because they are feeding themselves some of that old messaging that they've heard. And that's why Gen 101 really works to recalibrate students so they can hear the new messages of hope and success. And that means that they can then change the messages that they tell themselves. So we really try to program them for success. Another thing I notice is that I get quite a few emails at the beginning of the course. Our class started today, actually. So they're announcing and proclaiming that they're not tech savvy, or I haven't been in school for over 20 years. And they're so nervous about their future performance in the course. And they're kind of like prepping me for that they kind of forget that today's the first day, right? So they talk about how they haven't read books in a while, and they're just worried about they're going to miss details. So I spend a lot of time saying, relax, no worries. Like no worries is like my famous, like that's my statement. One of my other sayings is that everything you want is on the other side of fear. I have this saying in a frame in my house because when I was completing my doctorate, that was me. I had imposter syndrome. I had this I don't belong here mindset. And my husband used to say, what are you so afraid of? Just go do it. So I normalize that fear for students with them, and I let them know that it's a real feeling that I've had as well. And I let them know that their decision to even start college tells me more that there is a piece of a growth mindset inside of them and that they want more. And wanting more in and of itself can be scary because so many of our students don't really know what more is. And many of our students are wanting more, something more than anyone in their family has ever achieved or attempted. And so even as they're crafting this new life, they have this fear of the people around them not accepting them and the changes that they're going through. So I can tell you many times I hear that I have to change my friend circle to have more supportive friends around me. And when we talk about creating a support network in Gen 101, that is what we're talking about, helping them create that supportive circle. And that leads to the other things that we know is so important: balance in their school, work, and life, and all of those personal responsibilities. So those are kind of the things that I see from our Gen 101 students.
Well, that is a lot, Teresa. You just really hit on so many things, and the way that everything you want is on the other side of fear. I know we've talked about that quote. That's so timely. James Bond, I have a question for you. What fears have you noticed with incoming students in the first few courses that students attend? And what did you notice about military students in particular?
Thank you so much for that question, Nancy. And I'm going to piggyback on something that Dr. Handy shared. And I think it really does go with that belonging. Now, I think I have a little different experience than a lot of members on the panel. For 5 years before I moved into this role, I was really working with our students who had the most challenges and trying to support them and find resources in their areas to help them deal with whatever challenges they were having in their life. And I started teaching the Gen 101 course because that can be very heavy work. And I just love seeing our students come in and the excitement, and they were making this step to change their lives. And so it was very fulfilling for me. And it kind of helped me do a good job at my job because I got to see more of a balance instead of just our students who were struggling. But to get back to your question, I would say the largest group or the largest fear that I saw was students not feeling like they belonged. And it was strange because our younger students felt like that all the students were older than them and they didn't really belong in this kind of environment. Our older students felt like all the students were younger than them and they didn't fit into this environment. And so what I really tried to do is the same thing I tried to do with our military students, and that is let them know, hey, everybody is here because they're going for this goal. And maybe your commonality is that y'all are all striving for this goal. And, as I've built teams with people, as I work with clubs and organizations, once you can find the similarities or the commonalities, it can really help you overcome the other challenges you face. And so in our discussion boards, in the words, when maybe I'm on video chat with a student that's having problems with waypoint or doesn't understand how to get into live learning, if we can pepper in the similarities that we find between them and another student, or just make them feel like, yes, you're part of this team. We see you, you bring value. I always try to thank them for something. Like in our discussion post in Gen 101, we really try to bring a sense of community. A lot of the information is about their goals or what they're trying to do. And as they're making these suggestions to one another, if we can compliment on that and say, what you told Stephani or what you told Teresa, that was really good. And I bet that helps them. Have you thought about this? Anything we can do to bring these students together so that they know they're not alone, I think really helps them overcome the fear of not belonging. I see it in military students. I see it in older students. I see it in younger students. I see it in first generation college students. Just letting them know, hey, we're all here together. I came back after a long break serving in the Army to higher education, and all the mentors that I found and people that helped me, just letting them know that this is an environment that they can find that. And as long as they keep being present, as long as they keep connecting, they're going to get the benefits of it. So hopefully that answered your question, but that sense of belonging and the fear that they don't belong or others aren't like them is probably the biggest fear I see.
Well, James, you really touched on something that I wasn't expecting. You mentioned age, how people or students might feel a difference just because of age. And I just wondered about the difference that a student might feel as a military student versus a student who is non-military. Do you have any thoughts on where fear comes in, or does it even come in?
So I started working with military students back in 2011, and we were building a Ph.D. Center of Excellence for Veterans. And all the messaging was how these students are older, the different experiences that they've been through compared to our other students. And it really was segmenting them from the population. And that message, we were giving that message to faculty, we were giving it to staff. But I think the most challenging is we were giving it to students, and they were already in a very isolated culture. Like military and veterans already kind of clumped together. And so to get them to start using our services and programs and to make the connections they need, because unless they were going to Booz Allen Hamilton or one of these organizations that just hire a bunch of military, they had to start working on that cultural transition in our classrooms. They have to be able to get along with their bosses and their reports and all of that. And so to answer your question, I think that because of their experiences, because of the different things that they have done, they feel like it cuts them off from the standard population. But we have students that weren't in the military, but were in other situations that taught them many of the same skills, maybe not as intensely. Maybe it wasn't this huge, process of doing that. But again, as long as we can show the similarities and commonalities, talk about the goal and where they were going, get them to see the value in people that maybe didn't go into the military, but they developed leadership skills from this experience or that experience. Just being able to bring it together to where they're not so isolated and different. Like we're not using that language, and we're really reinforcing the similarities or the ways that they're like their peers.
Well, yes, I agree with what you're saying. And I know that as a digital learning institution, isolation is one of the things that we try to overcome with our students by engaging with them and using new ways to do that. And I know we've been working on that for the last year or so. So thank you for letting us know what the military and age construct is like for that. Well, I'd like to move into the next segment of our panel, and it has to do with instructor and administrative input at the midpoint of their learning program and nearing graduation. And that's the population that I teach to. So I'm really interested to hear from the panel on this. I'm going to start with Bill Davis. Bill, what fears have you noticed with students who are further along with their program? Are these students that are high performers, low performers, somewhere in between? What have you noticed?
Well, and Nancy, and I just want to echo what everybody else says. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here in the panel and to pay it forward and add a little bit of value to everyone. So thank you for having me. I'm going to answer these two questions pretty quick. Then I'm just going to bridge into some other things to point out some of the things I heard that are very, very sound. And one thing that I will say as students move through their learning continuum, I don't see a lot of fear. I see more, I'm busy. I got to balance. I've been transferred over to this job. I'm working in this state. I need some help. Now, that's where I salute Tony Farrell, Dr. Maya, the organization with Culture of Care, because, you know, before the rest, your attitude must pass the test. You know, you describe me as a servant leader, servant transformational leader. I believe in that. I believe in, you know, there's three parts to any communication. There's a verbal part, a nonverbal part, there's a paraverbal, the pace, and then there's also a content part, and then a relational part and a tone. So anytime I get in any of these situations, the thing that I practice is care. I practice kindness. I practice showing concern. Let's leading the way, helping them resolve that issue. You know, all of my colleagues here on this panel are very, very engaged with students, and I salute that. I think it's wonderful. So I don't see a lot of fear. I just see a lot of management of balancing different roles. And then also, are these students high performers, low performers, somewhere in the middle? I think they're higher in the middle. And sometimes you see one that might have got a little bit and missed something. So what do? You couch, you lift, right? You model consistency so they see you leading, lifting, and equipping them for success. And the key is having a positive attitude, as you know, always demonstrate a positive attitude as you nurture them in their transformation. I believe that's very important. I think leadership and coaching go a long way. Just some final thoughts on some of the things I heard. I've seen, you know, comments in there about roles and balancing, and there is and here's what I want to share with the group. At St. Ambrose University, when I started my teaching career back in 2003 and 2004, one of the things that they put me through was some pretty extensive training, adult learning theory, et cetera. And what I found out was simply this, that students have real or perceived apprehensions in any course they go in. So be aware of that. And I taught about 50 of the entry-level courses and in my career early on. And I'll tell you, I could pick it up. I could see who might have a perception or who might really be afraid. So don't be afraid to give them some coaching, go out of your way, do some lifting. Very, very important. And as we move forward, you know, I just want to comment on something I saw in my VP of Academic Affairs back in my Iowa days. It said the distance from where I am at to where I am now and where I want to become is so frightening. Because of all that, I will close my eyes and leap for all that I will become. So, you know, make sure that you are there for your students. Make sure that they know that when they look at you, they know that person cares. And I'll tell you, I got a plaque from a student one time that said, at the very end, I used to tell them, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And she changed it at the back end when she came through, and I gave her some lift, and it said, students don't care how much you know until you should know how much you care. So keep caring and keep teaching. So Nancy, I hope that helps the panel.
It does, and it helps me too. I just love hearing your point of view that it's more dependent on being positive, and that sounds like it could possibly change the mindset.
Yeah, and Nancy, I did put an article that I wrote here for UAGC years ago, or Ashford, and it was on balancing roles, because the students do come in and they got couples roles, family roles, work roles. They might have disconnected with their education for some reason in the past. And I've always been taught, remember, your job is to make that connection this time stronger. So make sure we keep supporting.
Yeah, thank you. And you modeled that so well. Deb Swanson, I'd like to move to you as a panelist. How much can you pick up from students about their fears during the short span of a course? Can you give us an example?
Sure. Thank you, Nancy. And it's an honor to be part of this panel in TLC. So let's look at and reflect on how, as educators, we can recognize fears from students during the term. In the UAGC learning environment, sometimes students will express their anxiety in their introductory posts. They might even reach out to their faculty, their instructor before the course, starts, and share their concerns about the course content, etc. And yet sometimes fear is hard to recognize. To pinpoint when and where students exude a fear of failure, we should also help students develop a sense of self-awareness that maybe their fears are unfounded, maybe their fears need to be addressed, and it's all in supporting our students and finding a way to connect with them. We want to encourage them to, develop planning as a great habit. We want to help them celebrate their small wins. We want to help them increase their self-confidence by, recognizing when they accomplish goals. They've successfully posted in the forums, they've completed an assignment that they really struggled with. So why do they fear failure? Unfortunately, it is unavoidable. Everyone fears something, but to thrive in life, we have to encourage our students to pursue their goals and dreams, even if they're scary. It's important to remember that we can learn from our mistakes, and we can help our students build a stronger growth mindset by coaching them, encouraging them. Everything in the classroom to the student should be viewed as an opportunity to grow. And this is where we help them create self-talk that's positive and kind and focuses on their experience. We're focusing on their successes in the classroom as opposed to focusing on maybe mistakes in their work. An example of this is recently I had a student who openly disclosed her fears and anxiety about returning to school. She shared that she had failed previously, and yet she was determined to earn her degree for her children and for financial stability. She disclosed that she might not be successful, but she wanted to have discussions on how she could change that. And sometimes we just, as educators, need to remind students that they have a whole team at UAGC to support them. We're creating an environment of trust and respect and compassion. And during the term, we were able to overcome the obstacles that she thought she was facing. She changed her mindset. She recognized her self-worth, and she utilized university resources to the best of her abilities and advantages. She earned some good grades, and she achieved a passing grade. And she was able to manage her fear and time and gain great satisfaction during the process and successfully complete the term. And I think that's, as faculty members, we're the ones behind that. We need to have that supporting, caring environment and focus on their success. Thanks, Nancy.
Oh, thank you, Deb. I really liked what you had to say about the self-awareness piece. That's something that we can pick up on in those early introductions that the student gives in the course. I always rely on that for a deeper dive into who each individual student is. And coaching just goes hand in hand with understanding what those types of things that they share in the intro. That way we're able to channel our coaching to its best and highest ability. Matt, I have a question for you. When helping students prepare for their graduation and career advancement, have you noticed any of the 3 fears that we've discussed, or have you noticed something different?
Thanks for asking, Nancy. I'll try to answer the question succinctly, but I want to tell a story. All the panelists' responses to your questions have thrown me off my script. And it's because it evoked something in me that I thought about, and I sort of had forgotten, but now I remember. But to answer your question just really, really succinctly, I think you see all 3, right? Probably. And what that does is it combines into what I think is a pretty broad human fear of being anonymous. Like, people don't inherently believe that they matter. They just don't. Our society doesn't say you matter. People don't inherently believe that they can necessarily succeed and do something they've never done before, or nobody in their family's done. I come from a blue collar background. My dad was a firefighter, never went to college. My mom stayed home, did part-time jobs. And people in my family make fun of me or from my hometown, like, how many degrees you have now? Or like, they'll say you're educated. And so, those pressures, they're not doing that to stop you. But the boys from the neighborhood, they don't understand what this is. And so it's really hard to come up against that as a human and still continue forward. And I don't have a lot of barriers, like when I think of my own experience from that perspective, but I have some. But I think this anonymity aspect is really important when we talk about institutions. So I'll give an example. Dr. Handy mentioned like students, I failed before. Let me just tell you right now, straight up, everybody who is like my boss, my transcripts from community colleges have plenty of Fs, plenty of Ws. Like, I don't want the student clearinghouse to be the ultimate judge of me, because it ain't going to be good until you see the last 3 experiences, right? And so, I remember my now wife went to UNC Chapel Hill she went to get her MPH from there. And we moved out there, and I was gonna okay, I'll go back to community college, mainly because I couldn't find a job. And so I went to Durham Community College, and Durham Tech it's called. And they said, hey man, okay, you got a bunch of F's, we'll let you in, it's all good, we'll figure this out. But you're gonna have to start with math way back. And I was like, but look, I think it was I forget what the class it was, but to get into stats, which is the next course, and I got a C, right? So I had to bring my transcript, the actual transcript, to the professor teaching stats. And I had to show him physically, I got a C, so I can be in this course, I can do it. But on that transcript were 5 Fs. How embarrassing is that, right? So now I got to walk in and meet this guy. And I'll never forget it. And I'm glad that this came up for me. I had circled the C, because I'm like, just look at that, please. And I put it on the desk, and he looked at it for a solid minute. And he just looked up at me and he said, yeah, great, man. You qualify. I'll see you on Monday. And that is all I needed, because that's all he, was within his purview. But he definitely saw, right, that holistic, what had been happening. And he said, you can do it. And then that propelled me. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have made it through to the transfer situation. Many instances there as well that really helped me with professors and administrators, and then to graduate school. So I think him telling me, you matter, your experience matters, all of this, I see it, but I think you can do it. That changed my life wholly and completely. There's no other explanation. So that's the fear we see. They all combine. And as students get close to the end, right, then they're going, oh, let me apply for jobs. Let me try for that promotion. Okay, this is like another out-of-body experience. I'm moving from blue collar to white collar, or retail to office job, or whatever, or in my industry. I think you see people, I sometimes apply for jobs because I work with the career team. Like, I'll do it on purpose just to see what the process is, and like to optimize my resume, see if I can get an interview, And I remember I applied for a job at Canva. This is like 2 or 3 years ago. And it was like, I just wanted to see what the process was. And I had all the requirements, Adobe, all the stuff. And I did this whole application. I sent it in and like submitted the application. And 30 minutes later, I get, you're rejected. You do not qualify. How demeaning is that? Number one, I did qualify. I'm a professional in the field of, career service. So I knew, and I optimized my resume. I used technology to do it. But also a half hour. Really? That's how long it took to tell me that I'm not qualified for this position. And our students are experiencing that as they get close to the end. So it's important to know that. Yeah, so I think that fear of anonymity, we have to make sure our students know you matter, you count, and I'm going to count you, and you're here. So yeah, that's my answer. Long answer to your question. I know you said 2 minutes. I'm sure that was longer. Sorry.
Thank you, Matt. And I just really liked how you phrased the student clearinghouse isn't the final decision maker of a student's life. And you gave just such great examples. So I appreciated your story, especially on the transcript side and what you experienced. I'd like to move into part 2 of our panel discussion to the deeper read. This has to do with full potential versus conditioning limits. And James, I have a question for you. What can you tell us about mentorship and working with veterans?
It goes to, I think, what Bill said about people don't care what you know until they know you care. I think one of the challenges that I've seen, some of the people that do the greatest work with veterans is that messaging. And feeling like only a veteran can help a veteran. Like, just like Matt, like I've got somebody that, changed my life, and they weren't a veteran. Like I signed up for work study. I was going into Border Patrol. They still had to do a background check for me. And my supervisor, I was doing work study. She was like, boy, why are you going into the Border Patrol? I see you doing this and this and this. If you don't take a typing class and apply for a job here, blah, blah, blah. But to lean in like that and take it, because look, I was young. I was fresh out the Army. I was barking at everybody. I even had a biology teacher give me a Christmas card because I was yelling at students in my class because I couldn't hear the lecture. And I was like, if y'all don't shut up so I can hear. And she honestly gave me a Christmas card. When I became full-time faculty, I called the community college. One of my friends there found her email. She doesn't even teach anymore. And I sent her this email like, hey, I'm a faculty member now, and you always supported me. And she emailed me back like, of course I remember you. Your name's James Bond, and so and so and so. But it was a great experience. And so to get back to mentoring, military or veterans, it's really about seeing them. And what I was going to say is that, when I was building my centers, the faculty members and the staff that were best with the veterans, they were the same faculty and staff that were best with first generation or best with students of color or best. And it all goes back to what I said the first time. And I think it's really finding the commonality you have with the student and building a relationship from that. And so if you want to mentor a veteran or support a veteran, it's not about knowing that a Marine's called a Marine and not a soldier. It's not. What it's about is seeing that person, hearing what they tell you, not going down the checklist in your head of what a veteran is and throwing stuff out there that maybe you're this or maybe, and having bad contact. Like, listen to what they're telling you, help them with that, build your connection off that commonality, and you can change lives. And I try to do that with all my students. I don't care how different they are to me. They're going to a non-traditional school to get their education at whatever point of their life. And that's where I got my undergraduate degree, from a similar school. And so I try to build off that. Anything else that I hear, understand what their goals are, and if you know something about that path, help them with it. If not, point them in the right direction. I mean, for me in Gen 101, like when they're writing about what their career goals are and it's something that they're not doing now, I tell them all the time, hey, do not wait until you're about to get your degree to talk to career services. Like, you don't know how many students I have talked to that focus really hard on their academics, but don't pay attention to the career transition they're trying to do, and wait until the last minute and then expect career services to work magic. Talk to them now. Let them know what you're trying to do. Like, let's start building that network. Let's do whatever it is you need to do. But I think we have a lot of very valuable services here. When you hear something from a student and they can use one of our students, refer them. Understand Access and Wellness and what they do. Understand that we have student advocates. And if someone's going through this life-changing hardship, get them over there, because maybe there's something we can connect them with to kind of ease that load. And so I just go back to see the student that you have in front of you, listen to what they're telling you, and support them as best you can. Like, so many, I love Matt. Like, we've taught different times. I love being in this environment because so many of us do different things. And I'm a learner. Like, I've got all these eclectic interests. This is one of the schools that I have always found somebody to work on something with and build an authentic relationship with, based on outside pursuits, based on love of education or whatever it is. I try to do that with my students as well, like connect them, understand what their goals are, understand what they love, and connect them with people that can help pursue that, because that's what my mentors did for me, and they changed my life. And so
well, I just love hearing about the value of connection. You really have explained it from start to finish, as far as how it's been a part of your own learning and how you impart that to the students. Due to the time restraints of our panel, I'm going to move into the last section of our panel, which is our future vision. And I'm going to ask a question that I'd like all of you to answer, if you can and have the time within our panel restraints. From your university role perspective, what is most needed now to raise awareness of student fears, and what can be done to lower fears and increase learning motivation? And I'll start with Deb.
Thank you, Nancy. I think, in my opinion, the key is effective communication. We're all aware that the university has some great resources. We've got the Writing Center, we've got the library, career services, like James just mentioned. And the key is to make sure that we're communicating that to our students, that we're making sure that they're aware that we have a team here to support them. They're aware that we have services to support all their needs. We don't want them feeling like they're out there on an island. As an organization, we need to continue to meet the students where they're at, whether it's a phone call, a Zoom, offering a training workshop, offering a career workshop. The key is to provide an exceptional level of service to every student that walks in the door. We should be treating them the same. We should be giving them what they need and want. We want to see them walk across the stage as much as they do. So that's my answer briefly. So somebody else can jump in.
Thank you, Deb. Matt, what do you say?
Yeah, I think you just need to connect with students, right? So let's be honest, if you work at this institution, you can get away with certain positions, you can get away with not talking to a student. You could email them, you can do all sorts of things. you need to call them if you can. Some students do better with written communication. That's fine, but you need to connect with them. However you're going to do that, whether it's webinars, presentations, calling. I called a student earlier this year about like something, and she's telling me about her husband's chemo's back. He has to be back in chemo because his cancer's back. That wasn't in the student information system. So if you want to know what students are fearful of, what's impacting them, you have to figure out a way to get in front of them.
Thank you, Matt. Teresa, Dr. Handy.
Thank you. So I totally agree with Matt. Just this week, I heard from a former student, and he mentioned he was going in for surgery today. So I made a note to make sure I sent him an email this morning to let him know I was thinking about him today. Those little actions that you do, even if you send a mass email, the students that respond back, they want to hear from you. So as a faculty member, there has to be opportunities for faculty to develop that deep understanding of the lived experiences of our students, because some of our students have had experiences we have not had. So taking time to engage in the faculty community of practice is really important. And those meetings are on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And to lower fears of our students, it's important to stress the importance of consistency, support, and care. We have a culture of care, and as a former social worker, that really resonated with me, because the first principle is start where your patient is, or start where your client is. So we need to start where the student is. And that way we can help them in those early courses to understand the rigorous approach that is going to be needed, but give them that support and care. To increase learning motivation, students need connections to the real world and opportunities to demonstrate their learning in supportive learning environments. So from where I sit as a Gen 101 instructor, so that means that I show them success stories about students who have made it through Gen 101 and beyond. Taking time, as Matt said, to get to know our students is important, because we have to help them see the resources that we have in place to help them. And we have to help them find their way in space at this table. And that's so important, because it's a long journey to earn a college degree, and that we need to help them understand that it requires stamina, dedication, and perseverance.
Thank you so much, Dr. Handy.
Hey, Nancy, I'm going to jump in really quick because it's your time to leave. Nancy's actually participating in a next panel on this topic that I'll share more about in a minute. So I'm going to take over her moderating duty, kick Nancy out, and turn it over to Stephani Kilby to answer this question.
Thanks, Rachel. And thinking about this, the thing that comes to mind for me is be approachable. Create an environment where students feel welcome coming to you. I look around the room and I see amazing accomplishments all around me. I look at email signatures with degree after degree and all sorts of organizations. And I think, of course, we've worked so hard and we should celebrate this. And we do celebrate this, but does it make me approachable to a student? Is it a level of authority that's hard to overcome? And maybe it is and maybe it's not, but I would just say in all that we do, think about how we need to incorporate a welcoming environment that invites students to share, because students leave us all the time. B students, C students, A students, D students, they're leaving, and in many cases not coming to us to say, I'm thinking about heading out. Can you help me overcome that? So what can we do to partner with them? And it all starts with being approachable.
Thank you, Stephani. And James?
Again, I just think it's really seeing them, and what everybody here has said. If you're willing to listen and act upon what you hear in a supportive manner, I think that's it. That's the key to me.
And lastly, but not least, Bill.
Yeah, Rachel, I'll just add just a couple of words here. Be authentic and genuine. Be dedicated and committed to what you do. You're making a difference, and see the big picture. Realize that your work is moving a life forward, and follow your passion and your purpose. You'll do well.
Well, I thank you all for sharing your thoughts on this topic. This was an incredible panel. Nancy wanted me to share with you all to join the session immediately following this one for a look at how the 3 types of fears she discussed here relate to motivation. Special guest speaker and internationally known cognitive scientist, Scott Barry Kaufman, one of the top 2% in psychology, science, and human potential, intelligence, and motivation, will join Nancy at this next session, and you won't want to miss hearing about this paradigm breaker. I do want to thank you all again. Thank you to Nancy, who's not here, but thank you to this panel and to this audience for being so engaged and participating. Please use the survey link that I will do as soon as I can to nominate TLC presentations and keep the excitement going. Thank you all so much again.